He was not my biological father, but he loved my mother very, very much, and he was a wonderful husband to her when he was alive. And he actually grew up on the same street as us. You said, I see him, I'm smelling roses. That was the first thing you said. I'm smelling roses. I see the letter K on the house. And when I was a little girl, I would walk up the street, and this was before my mother actually married him. That was his grandfather's house, and he was there visiting. We would go up the street to pick vegetables out of this man's garden, and he would always cut roses for us, and they were really sweet smelling. And they brought over all of these roses. I think some of them were from Hungary. And you tapped into that. You knew that the roses were something that was a big connection between him and his grandfather. You let me know that he and his pappy were sitting at a hard wooden table. He was enlisted in the services, and he did have like captain's chairs around like a hard wooden table, and that they were playing cards. And the family game that we would play as we got older was Yahtzee. We would always play Yahtzee and cards. Nobody could have known these things. He wasn't my biological father. You would have never have known about the roses, the K's on the shutters of the house. You would have never have known about his relationship with his grandfather and how close they were. And by you telling me that, I knew for a fact there's no way. I mean, nobody else could have known these things.
I really believe she visited him.
He just wants you to know he knows how much you loved him.
And everybody in the room, their jaw just
knowing
dropped.
exactly what someone needs to hear.
That she called me when nobody really.
It was incredible.
And then I was like, oh my God.
There's more after this life. This is Ripple Road.
Hey there, welcome back to Ripple Road. This is episode 7. If you've been following the whole series from episode 1, a lot of things will start to make sense now. I get in with a lot of different people, a lot of different circles of friends, and move on, you know? It's like one chapter leads to another, I just become this wandering, worldly, nomadic type that is, I guess you'd say it's like I have trouble forming connections with people and settling in, you know? But looking back on it, I've tried to weave it all together into this storyline that makes sense of me being a medium. But truthfully, there's been plenty of moments in my life that don't really fit this narrative. You know, it's like I'm not just here to be a medium. I'm here to be Scott, and I have my own emotional baggage, my own interests, my own curiosities. You know, it's like I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I'm a lover, I'm a dreamer. All right, that's Steve Miller. The point is that I'm glossing over some moments in my life that just don't fit this narrative, but they are important. So this whole like span of years where I'm sort of doing reading, sort of not, like the writer that goes out into the world and observes, and then they can write this great American novel, you know? Well, this is like that with my mediumship. I have to fuse with the person that I'm sitting with. I have to see the world from within their skin, you know? I got to be in them, and then I get it. And then I can speak to their soul and their experience. It's this conduit of energy that harmonizes between me and the person I'm sitting with, and then I leap off into this other dimension, this like deeper connections between us and our angels and our guides and the God force, the essence, you know? Let's live in that harmony together in that moment. That's what I'm doing in a reading, right? So if somebody's not really open to exploring that inner self with me, it gets blocked up, you know? If you're like at a place in your life where you just kind of have developed this hubris, this kind of I'm here and I'm me and I'm certain of my things and very entrenched in your worldview, that's difficult for me to really make some movements happen, to do that healing therapeutic energy in a reading if you're kind of on your high horse, you know what I mean? So I have found over these years of experiences that there's all kinds of people out there, right? Like naturally, I would click with people that I harmonize with, that I get, right? So in the beginning, it would be like people in my same socioeconomic class, right? The same kind of set of life experiences or the same situation going on in their family. I read them well. And I think all mediums starting out probably started out by reading people that were like them, right? Your closest friends and family, those that you trust, and it harmonizes well, right? The reading comes together well.
So you would come over, you would give us readings. They were always fun.
kind of lighthearted, because I feel like I was read by you so many times before we kind of got through the deep stuff, and then after that it was like just fun little things. And Steve, from, I want to say my freshman year, like we were super close and we had a really cool bond and we were just great friends. And so we started calling each other Love of My Life. And so that would be our nickname for each other. And there was one reading where you randomly said, the love of your life's name is James. And I thought, well, that's not right. I remember telling Steve this, and he was like, what? And so he would start leaving little notes, and he would sign either Love of Your Life, or he started signing James. And it was so funny. And so for some reason, I kept one of those Post-its, looking back like, oh my God, the love of my life, his name actually is James. Just flash forward to now, I'm married to Jim.
In a previous episode, I talked about how I dropped out of college, University of Delaware. I went back, one semester, and I'd drop out and skip a semester, and then go back and I'll take 2 classes just to keep my foot in the door, and then I'm just not into it. So I end up just kind of skirting around from job to job, It's like so many years of just kind of skipping around, Like I could never commit to a job or a woman. Like, that's no good, But the truth is, life doesn't always happen in a way that makes sense. You know what I mean? And I kind of feel like if you've had enough battering of experiences in life that are out of your control, it humbles you, I only know what I know, and I'm pretty quick to admit, like, I don't know everything. So other people that come at me where they kind of feel like they do know everything, this kind of narcissistic, selfish way of looking at the world, I have a problem getting through to those people in a reading. So I will completely admit that these years, I'm a mess, man. I'm all over the place. At one point, I had counted that I had over 60 jobs. That's crazy, Never had a problem getting a job, always had a problem keeping a job, From like so many different retail jobs, warehouse jobs, you name it, I've tried it. So we're getting into the times here where it's like early to mid 20s, moving through my 20s, and I'm still doing the mediumship thing. I'm still doing the spirituality thing and really fascinated by my dreams. I'm still doing the writing thing, fancying myself a novelist, At one point I even wrote a book and tried to publish it, and I'm just all over the map, Going out drinking all the time with your friends. It's like there's just this weird mixture of like my interests all bleeding together as I'm trying to figure out myself and get out into the world and fit in somewhere, make sense of it all. It's crazy, don't do drunk readings. I know that now, but like at the time I didn't know. It's like it does away with your inhibitions. You know what I mean? It made me more comfortable to talk about it openly, I guess, and not be afraid of the criticisms that would inevitably come up. But I remember at one of these parties, a couple people hanging out in the front living room of this house, and I went and I sat down. So I started doing this reading on this guy whose brother, like, was serving in Iraq or something, and, like, the guy had since passed on some motorcycle accident. I'm like, yeah, your brother used to be, like, a helicopter mechanic, like, during the Desert Storm time. And he's like, how the hell would you know that? I mean, you're right, but how would you know that? So when those inhibitions went away and the fear of being wrong and the fear of criticism was no longer there, that's good. It helped kind of clear the channel in a way. But the problem with those is that you can get a little too drunk. And if anybody in spirit out there likes the feeling of intoxication, I mean, I'm a bridge. I feel them, but they feel me. So if they like that feeling of intoxication, they're going to come through. They might not be the most, appropriate person in spirit to be delivering messages through. you know? They're just wanting to feel the intoxication, and that's no good, man. I don't know if I want to associate my energy with that thing. Now what? Now it's going to be in me? Now I'm going to feel it like on the peripheral? I'm going to go to sleep tonight and wake up screaming and be like, what's that thing? What's that little dark figure over there? It's like Joey Two Whiskeys over here. He's hanging out with me like, oh, let's drink some more. Like, I don't need that. Hell no. So like I tell people today, absolutely no alcohol at a reading. Because, there's probably nothing bad out there. The chances are pretty slim, but it's like leaving the barn door open all night. Maybe there's a critter. Maybe it gets in there. Now you got to deal with trying to get this rabid skunk out of your barn. Good luck with that, So you'll probably be fine, but like, I don't want to take the chances. You know what I mean? And like, it's not even if I'm drinking. I don't want anybody else even feeling a little bit of a buzz because I'm connecting to you. I'm feeling your vibe. And so if you're buzzed, I'm buzzed. And if I'm buzzed, person in spirit's going to be like, hey, let's get some scotch. I don't need it. I was dating this girl, Erin, and I was in with her whole clique, her friends, It was like college age. She was younger than me. So her friends were all still in college and everything. And we would go over and hang out with them at the dormitory and party. And, these little messages would come through.
That was the most girls that I ever lived with. There was 3 rooms, and that's when you would come over. You would come over often and just give us like fun little reading. A random reading where you said, what happened to your foot? And I was like, nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. And you said, it's bleeding. And I looked and I was like, nope, I don't know. This isn't really making any sense. And, maybe like half an hour later, I went to grab something out of the freezer, a glass bottle, and I dropped it and it shattered. And I remember thinking like, be careful because you don't want to step on anything. So we cleaned it up carefully, and still I must have missed a shred of glass because lo and behold, I stepped on it and my foot was bleeding and it was cut.
And I remember this one. I'll never forget it, This guy came in and he was sitting on the couch and I ended up like really pinning him down in the couch and like, I'm going to read you. I feel it,
Steve was over, and I remember we were in the living room. He was in the room next door with Allison. I don't think Allison fully loved readings either. So it was the two of them. And he was kind of just making fun of the whole thing. Like, you guys are so gullible. Like, this is so funny. You guys are really into this. Like, this is just dumb. So then he comes out into the common room, and I feel like you just locked in on him. You said, I have a message for you. I remember him sitting there, and I remember him just being silent the whole time. I don't remember him giving you any hints as to whether or not you were like hitting the nail on the head. He just listened. And I remember you talking about his grandmother.
And it's like you can tell that he doesn't really want to be there, that I'm like kind of going too far, I guess. But I'm encouraged by the liquid courage, and I'm not really coming at it from the best place of love and light. So I'm just barreling through. And talk about like hubris. I remember having his grandmother on the periphery, and I'm like, there's your grandmother. I have her coming through. Wait, she's from another country. Oh, you're going to think there's no way I'm going to get it. You're going to think, I got it though. I'm about to blow your mind. You ready? Your grandmother is from, drum roll, Romania. And he was like, duh! And I was like, I told you, bitch, I got you. It's like top rope, super flex coming down on you. Bam! Romania! I just told you that, What kind of healing is taking place there? That's no good. What is that? That's like ego, man. That's me with my insecurities trying to put on a show at a party at a college. Like, that's no good.
The one thing that struck me that I always remember is you talking about a friend of his that we knew nothing about, who had committed suicide. And to verbatim recite the toast that him and his friends would give to him in his memory. And that was just, like, you could tell that Steve was a lot, just, he was shaken. And I think he kind of broke down because it was an emotional reading. There was a note, and he didn't know anything about the note. So he had to go, and he ended up calling his one friend, and I believe that the friend confirmed that there was a note. I remember after that, he was like, let me know the next time Scott's over, because I don't want to be there. Like, almost like he's good, like, I don't want to be read again. And we were at the same time like, see, it's real. This is why we love it, because, like, he knows stuff and he's really communicating with people. So we all were almost like in your corner, like, yeah, give him another one.
I hope that guy, wherever he is out there, just knows that life continues after death and took something positive out of that, because you got to center yourself in the white angelic light. But with drunk readings, you just lose control of the lever. And after 4 or 5 beers, next thing you know, I'm like, whose grandfather is Frank? Who's that guy? Is that you? Okay, I think he wants to talk to you. And then the next thing you know, I'm going into this reading, making some girl cry at the bar. My friends are like, what'd you tell her? I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's no good. You know what I mean? But I learned my lesson eventually, and it cut it out completely. Cut out the alcohol thing. You have to.
When you're reading like Mom or Jeff, and you are like closing out, you always have like a last minute tidbit, like for me. It's because Pop always swoops in there and it's like, tell Taryn this, and it's always like a current, like happening right now situation. Like the one time when you did a phone reading with Jeff, I had not said this to anyone, but I really wanted to dye my hair like a crazy red color just to do it because I was bored. And I like literally had just had the thought the day before, and I was like, kind of like Pinteresting things, getting inspired. And he comes out of a phone reading, he's like, Scott said that if you're going to dye your hair, dye it now, because once you start having kids, it's going to be dark, so you got to do it now. And I was like, so freaked out. I was like, how? I felt like you were inside of my brain. So insane.
So this whole time, I'm kind of drifting in my life and not really sure where I'm going, but I'm still doing more readings. It's getting more and more, And at different times, I've got business cards, and I would like hand it to somebody and be like, here you go, here's my email address, here's my phone number. But other times I would be like, all right, well, I'll do this, but don't tell anybody. I don't want to be known for this, So I was kind of flip-flopping over these years about doing readings, not doing readings. I don't know what I'm doing, right? At one point, I was working at this bookstore in Jersey. I love bookstores, can you tell? It's like, out of all the jobs I was like, maybe this different bookstore. They don't have a record of me working there and quitting. I won't tell them about any of that stuff. Let's just see if I get a job here, I'd even come back to the same store, years later and be like, I'm applying for a job here. Oh, okay. And like, didn't tell them I ever worked there and like burned them and like quit, And then it's like, I get back in and someone will be like, oh my God, Scott Henry, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm back, bitch. Ha ha. I'm working here again. How do you like that? And there was this guy I was working with at the bookstore. We'll call him John. So John, was really open to the spirituality thing and meditation and seeing the world from a new age perspective. And we would talk up at the cash register when we were on the same shift. And eventually he's like, I got to have you over the house. And he kept badgering me. And I'm like, I don't really do readings, I'm not into it right now. And he talked me into it. And he's like, we'll pay you, I'll collect some money from everybody. I don't know, it might have been like $10 a piece or something, right? So it's like 6 or 7 people, maybe I made $60 or something, I don't know. So I went over there and I did the reading, I did it like the right way. I took my shoes and socks off, I meditated, I have everybody sitting together at one time in the living room, in a nice little semicircle. And the reading worked great, It's one of those things where I'm in trance, so I don't remember the details, but they were all very impressed. And John just kept talking about it, and he's like, oh yeah, we got to do this again. Like, how much? Come on. You're like trying to make it worth my while, like, what do you want? I'll give you $100, come on, we'll take up a collection. Let's do it. So he wanted to go to his other family over in South Philly, So we set up a time, I went over to South Philly and go into this, row home. and I'm doing the reading, and it's a little more difficult to get it started. I don't know, maybe there's some skeptics there, or maybe somebody had drank before. I don't know why. I just tried, and I finally broke through, and I remember this one. See, I don't usually remember the details unless something really stands out to me, and I talk about it afterwards, and then it carries it into my conscious mind, and then I can remember it. It's like my memory otherwise doesn't really record it in my brain, you know? But I remember this one message because it was so graphic that it stuck out in my head. I was like, upstairs in the back bedroom, there's this guy. He's been gone a long time. I don't know, decades. Is from like the 70s or something. I feel like it's like an uncle or grandfather. I can't figure it out, but he seems related somehow. Okay, here's the clue. There's like a burning sensation around my neck, like something happens on my neck, like I don't know if it's snapped or like there's like a sudden jerking sensation, like a whiplash, like and it burns, like my muscles are tore or something, like I don't know if he fell or what this is. And the lady goes, oh, well, my uncle so-and-so hung himself in that room. And then I realized what I was sensing was the moment where the rope around his neck pulled taut and it spun his body around and gave him a rug burn. Oh, God, that's the sensation this guy had when he passed. That's really gory. That's really graphic. And I ended up getting around that detail and bringing him through in a much more clear way, you know, that he's with his family and he's happy now and all that. So that's nice. But God, trying to figure out who he was and getting these validating details. And I'm talking about the rug burn that the noose made around his neck and how the weight of his body spun him around at the moment when he dropped. Like, oh boy, that one stuck out in my head. Like maybe we need to, think about these things before I just go shouting off all these details. Like, let's make sure we're connecting to the best place of love and light. You know, and I did a handful of readings like this, but the reason I'm talking about that one, I had gotten a phone call, I don't know, like that same year, I guess, from this woman in South Philly, and I'll call her Julie. And Julie was like, I got your name from somebody. And I'm like, there's not that many people that I am really out and about with this mediumship thing with. Who would you have gotten my name from? I don't know. I never figured it out really until just recently when I caught back up with Julie for the podcast and got her talking about those early days and those first readings. And, when I wasn't even really doing it, it was like, I don't know, all right, $50, I'll come out and do a reading for you. Here she is talking about it.
A friend of mine, she was living in South Philadelphia at the time, and I was still living in Philadelphia, and she told me about you, and she said, we had this party, and this medium came over. His name is Scott Henry, and blah, blah, blah. You were just starting out. And you're like, this is what I do. I just sort of channel this stuff, and I hope you like it.
I probably read Julie and her family and friends like once every 6 months, once every year. I don't know. It's been a long time. It's been like 20 years now that I've known her.
It's 20 years. We've known each other 20 years.
She was always very supportive. She was always telling me like, you should charge more. This is a deal. This is a bargain, You were doing like 2 and 3 hour readings for like $60. Yeah, I was like, please. You're like, no, because I don't really know what I'm doing yet. I'm like, you definitely know what you're doing. It was really encouraging to have somebody so supportive like that, who was also very spiritual, So we kind of gelled really nicely, and those readings always worked really well. Like her house was good energy, the people she invited was good energy, and it was really encouraging that it was never very difficult. And one of the interesting things with her is that her brother, Danny, had just passed. And Danny is like this character, man. He was coming through so loud and clear that I enjoyed bringing him through. I enjoyed being a conduit for Danny. He was amazing. His personality was just so like vibrant and robust, and he came through. I mean, it's like I almost let him in a little too much, but I trusted him, So he'd come through with whole words and phrases and just amazing personality. And over the course of the next 10 years, as I'm doing more and more readings, there's like other people's readings, like totally unrelated to Julie, just other people had gotten my number, and this Danny is coming through. And then I realized, like, wait a second. He's not coming through because he knows somebody in this reading. He's coming through because he likes me. He's like, hey, it's Scott. He's open again for a channel. Hey, buddy, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? You know, and I'm like, is that all he's doing? But then I realized, no, he's actually tagging along with me to help out other people in spirit come through, because like his heart goes out to the people who can't quite bridge that connection. And he's like, I'll help him out. I'll help him come through. I kind of like this work, you know? It's like he found a job in spirit helping me bring through other spirits for people. And I told Julie, I was like, your brother is kind of going to like the next level. I mean, he's kind of like an angel, you know? He's like becoming like a spirit guide. He's like not just your brother anymore. He's really kind of taking on some power, helping me bring through people. Like, he's a good person, you know? Other people in spirit, I think, like Danny's vibe. He was very friendly and sociable, and he could be like, step right up to this man's head right here. Here's the microphone, and you speak in like this, and they'll hear you. Come on, that a boy, you got it, you know? And it's crazy, right? Like, imagine trying to tell somebody that doesn't believe in this stuff, like, that story. Like, they're going to think you're nuts, right? I never even met Danny in real life, but I got to know him so well, and he worked with me, and I appreciated it. It's crazy, right?
I'll never forget this. It was even before I married Bill. We got engaged, and we were going to go to Italy. We picked out all the sites. This is when you went to a travel agent. 2 days later, you came over to the house. We didn't say a word about it. While in the reading, you were like, oh, I see you traveling, and I see lots of exotic flowers and palm trees and blah. And me and Bill were like, that ain't happening. We're going to Italy. So after the reading, I said to you, what do you think that is? And you were like, well, I was seeing a lot of tropical stuff. And we're like, well, we're going to Italy. And you're like, well, I can only tell you what I saw. 3 days later, the travel agent called us and told us that we could not go to Italy because they would not marry us in Italy unless we had all of our documents in long Italian, translated. And Bill was like, oh, the hell with that. We're not going to go through the expense of all that. Let's just go to Hawaii. We had our money on the trip, and we ended up in Hawaii. Yes. And then I was like, oh, my God. Do you remember when Scott told us we were going to go to somewhere like exotic with like palm trees and exotic flowers? And we were both astonished.
One job I had worked was at a Delaware Park Casino over in Delaware. It's like a racetrack and a big, 2-story casino with slot machines and restaurants and all this stuff. And I got a job in the main vault. This is the main bank that feeds all the satellite banks. So you're deep in the innards of the casino, multiple steps of security, multiple doors to get into this lockdown. It's like you had to have a certain uniform, but you had to sew the pockets of your pants shut, and they would inspect you and write you up if there was holes in it because you could steal things or you could sneak in things. They had, total pat down to get into this main vault, So once you're in there, you're in there, that's your shift. If I worked an overnight shift from like midnight till 8 in the morning, there's not too much going on, you're just kind of counting out things and preparing bank deposits and stuff like that and settling out all the money. I would just hang out, and talk to other people coming in and out of the main bank. And one of my friends at the time there was Jamal. He was a younger guy from Jamaica. But what's funny is I started talking to Jamal about this stuff, like the spirit guides, and like probably shouldn't have done that. Man, Jamal thought I was crazy. I go, one time, he comes in back into the main vault through the door there, and I go, dude, I just seen like this thing walking in with you. And he's like, what are you talking about, man? And I'm like, there's like this spirit guide. It's like got all these feathers, like colorful headdress. He's like, man, you crazy for real, man. You crazy for real. I always remember Jamal saying that. You crazy for real, man. But it turns out we ended up talking about it. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's like Carnival. And I'm like, what's that? And he's like, yeah, they dress up in costumes. Oh, it's like a week-long celebration. I really want to go this year, but I got to work and I feel like I need to go. Through one thing led to another, he was like, You're right. I'm going to call up my cousin. He's up in New York. We're going to get together. We're going to go. It's a whole week. Oh, it's so much fun. So I'm like, see, the message was delivered, whether he thinks I'm freaking crazy or not, right? So
I had a lot of things that we both did that happened when I came to your readings, but something had happened to me. A girl that I had been friends with since 4th grade. Unfortunately, her son had died in a motor vehicle accident. You were discussing with a person at the time this passing of her son. These two people came to you to discuss this, right? You were focusing on them, and then all of a sudden you just looked up and saw me. You looked right at me and said her name. He saw me, connected through you to me, and you just came right through and said to me, tell my mom I'm with God, returning to the Creator, the beginning. At the time, too, I was with a friend from school that was in the same class, with me, that we all went to school with. It was really ironic that we were all together and you were reading someone that was there for Shelley. It was really weird. He saw me there and wanted to give me a message for his mom because his mom was not there. And I guess figured who you were talking to for him was not going to get that message to her. And I made sure I did. That next morning, I called her up.
So in previous episodes, I had talked about, going to Robert Egby's psychic development class. Well, he was still doing things, he was still having classes and workshops, and I paid one time to go and get my past life regression done with Robert, and that was cool. There was like a further thing for people who had already taken the development workshop that was just a psychic practice circle. I went to that, so I was still doing those things too. And at one point, Robert actually had called me out of the blue and was like, hey, I'm booked over at Salem Community College for a psychic event, and I need another medium to fill the event. I was like, really? That's kind of cool. He's calling me. He must be impressed. That's nice. So I was like, sure, I'll do it. He's like, all right, cool. And it pays this much and yada, yada. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I always remembered this. I went over and it's like, in their main, like dining hall, cafeteria area, the community college, activities committee or whatever had set this up. So they had like 3 card tables, me, Robert, and another medium. And when I showed up, he's got like a cool looking tie-dye tablecloth and like a thing that holds his business cards and like candles and crystals and all. Like he's got the setup, And he looks over at me and I got like the folding card table with no tablecloth on it. I reach down, I take my shoes off, I take my socks off, and we're getting ready, at noon for it to begin. And he's like, that's all you got is just you and the shoes off, huh? I'm like, yep, that's it. That's all I do, So it starts. And one of the time people are coming up to sit and get their reading. It's supposed to be like a 15-minute reading or 10-minute reading, whatever. I do my meditation and then the person comes to sit down and I'm like, okay, I got to go, right? I got to start talking. So, it's like vague at first. You're not supposed to like front load those readings, but like I got to start somewhere. So I'm like, what am I getting about college? All right. Are they doing a good student? Are they a bad student? Something's got to take. Something's got to produce this like little spike. And then it's like, oh, wait. Oh, they are the only one in their family to go to college. Okay, where am I getting this? Wait. There's like a grandmother on his dad's side. It's saying, right. Isn't that it? Okay, yeah. So I'll say, hey, there's a grandmother in spirit coming through on your father's side of the family who's talking about like, really proud of you. You're the only one in the family that's going to college. And like the kid, starts squirming in the seat like, this is weird. Like I didn't know what to make of this. I can start to get in like even more clearly, like who's saying that? It's like this grandmother, and while we're at it, look, don't feel guilty that you can't check in on your mom. That's your sister's responsibility. Wait, why did I just say that? I didn't even know you had a sister. And so it's like, it's getting really accurate, right? But like 10 minutes comes and ding, the time's up, you got to go. And I'm running like 12 minutes, 15 minutes. Once I get going, I can't stop, So then they get up and there's like a line and the next person jumps in the seat and I'm like, God, I'm still with the first person. Like, all right, I got to clear my head. Like, all right, give me a minute. let me just settle into myself and clear my head and just do like a quick couple of breaths to like get into my body and like kind of next person. And it start off vague again, and then like I get into focus, and then it's starting to get clearer, and I'm like, Rochelle? Who's Rochelle? Oh man, that's my girlfriend. What about her? And I'm like, all right, listen, she's actually really good for you. You need to be nice to her, okay? Stop messing around thinking about that ex, because you guys were done for a reason, okay? It ain't coming back around. Rochelle is the one. You need to grow up a little bit, okay? Like, they're squirming. Couple of breaths to like get into my body, and like, okay, next person. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you have a cousin that was murdered? Oh my gosh, like what happened here? And it's like, who's Nick? You know? And they're like, oh, that's my cousin, man. He was shot like 2 years ago. I'm like, all right, well, he was into some shady shit. And he's like, I know he was, but my dad don't believe it. And I'm like, well, I'm just letting you know that he's claiming responsibility for that. He knew he shouldn't have been there. He knew he was doing bad, and he feels sorry for it. So I don't know if you could tell your dad that, if you don't even believe it, but at least tell you that. At least we'll tell you that. Like, listen, it's okay. It's okay, man. He's in a better place now, you know? So then it's like, okay, next. And there's like a line forming, right? I'm going through 4 people, 5 people, 6 people. At one point, I don't even realize that there's a line forming because I'm like I got to stay in my zone. You know, I got to read these people. So when the activities coordinator comes up and she's like, can you make it like 5 minutes? The line's forming really big. And I look up, and there's Robert sitting alone at the table without anybody. There's the other medium sitting alone at the table without anybody. And there's a line of 20 people at my table. I'm like, what? There's other mediums. Like, there's other people here. Here, everybody would go back to their table in this dining hall and like chat me up. And they're like talking the stories. Like, what did they say? And you got to go to that guy, the barefoot guy with nothing on the table. You got to go to that guy, you know? That's the one. So, like, look, I'm not trying to be big-headed here. There are plenty of times where I suck. Like, I am no good in certain situations, man, and I know that about myself. But that Salem Community College thing, I don't know what, man. Maybe I had the right amount of coffee in me. Maybe I had the right amount of sleep. Maybe it was just that I kind of jived with these students better. I don't know. You know, Robert's an older guy. Maybe his energy didn't harmonize with him. I don't know why. By the time it was done, man, I was devastated. I was like physically drained, dark circles under my eyes. Robert's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, just like I have like a headache, man. I'm like, yeah. Well, I ended up having a migraine. It got so bad, no medicine would work, no food would work, and it carried over into my night's sleep. I kept getting up with these pains. The next morning, I'm even like, I feel like empty, like depressed, like just drained. And I realized it was from going in and out of meditation for one person, next person. Like I was picking up on people 3rd, 4th back in line when I'm trying to read the person that's sitting at the table with me. And I'm like, shut up. Like, this is so hard to focus, you know? There were things that I would say that like didn't even make sense until the second person sat down, and I'm like, oh, your mom is Marie. Oh my God. Like, okay. It's really challenging. So I learned from that, if you're going to do readings on multiple people in one night, they all got to be sitting together at once, you know? And there's like a max number of people, man, you know? Otherwise, it's going to kill me. Like trying to get in on one person's vibe, which is different frequency than another person, which is a different harmony than this other person. All those change-ups, all that personality shifts. I can't, man. 2 hours doing a reading for 6 people, that's enough. You know, it can go 3 hours, and then I start to get drained. It's too much. Some mediums will do all-day appointments, you know. They'll set aside, be like, Friday's my work day, and I'll do 10 of them. Kudos, man. That's amazing that you have that ability. I certainly don't.
And you walked in the door, and you walked around. It was like my old house in Philly. You walked around the first floor, and you said, you don't mind if I take my shoes off, do you? And then you just started talking. As I know, now I know that this is normal for you, but then we were just kind of looking.
two of us out of the crowd are like true understand believers and go to readers all the time, but the others were pretty skeptic about it, you know. So you were talking about, I have somebody here, and I think her mother just passed away. She had she died from a brain tumor, and whatever you said, it was like, Kathy's just sitting there not saying a word, and we all kind of look at her and go, Kathy, that's your mom. But it was so on target that even she had to agree.
Talking about how mediums connect in different ways, you know, when I first started coming into this at Jan and Ken Dean's, the Course in Miracles group, and learning that meditation and learning the angels of love, light, and peace and doing it that way, that stuck with me. That really clicked and harmonized with me. And it set me onto like this harmonic frequency. That's how you do readings. That's how you connect. That's how you bring through accurate messages. So I always did. And even at Robert's, he kind of did a similar thing. He would guide us in meditation. And so it turns out that both Jan and Robert have a common denominator, which is that they were both involved at one point or another with the Church of Spiritualism. And spiritualism is an actual religion that goes back like 150 years and is all about mediumship, right? And there was a church right there in Westville, New Jersey, where Jan herself was like I don't know if she was the pastor. Somehow she was involved with it at one point before she had to step aside for health reasons. And Robert, his wife Sharon, was like the treasurer over there on the board at the church. So it's like an actual church, you know, it's like a steeple and the stairs that lead up to the doors. And you're like, what is this all about? You go in and they're singing from the hymnals, you know, it's like these old crusty songs like, how great thou art, how great thou art. You're like, okay, all right, I'm dealing with this. So after the sermon, after the collection plate, they would say, and now it has come time in the service where we part the veil between the worlds, and our first medium will be, you know, Janet or whatever, you know, and she'll get up and stand up in front of the aisle and be like, okay, I am picking up on a Paula energy. I feel like I'm on this side of the congregation. Anyone? And someone would raise their hand and be like, my sister is Paula. Okay, I'm feeling something in the chest, like something. Oh, she had breast cancer. Okay, I'm with you then. And then she'd walk over and give this message to the woman through Paula, you know? It's like watching it from the congregation, and there's, you know, anywhere from 30 to 100 people, depending on which Sunday you went, right? You're sitting there watching these mediums perform, and it's like they're doing a similar style that Jan did, a similar style that Robert did. This is the common denominator. This is kind of crazy, you know? And that church there in Westville had this one guy named Hank. This old white guy, you know, white hair and glasses, and, you know, would wear his like shirt and tie. I think he came over from Philly every Sunday, and he had this bellowing voice. He would do a lot of the singing, you know, like they would have this kind of songs bringing in energy, you know, so that was their way of setting the tone. It was like, instead of the meditation, we're going to sing these songs and raise the vibration in the rafters and bring through those in spirit, you know. It's like Jan used to call it synergy energy when people were together for shared intention. Well, here's this energy. Now you don't even have to meditate. You just have to be in this vibe, in this church with the congregation, and you'll feel it, man. And Hank felt it, let me tell you. He would get in the zone, you know, and you couldn't stop him. He'd be on a roll. He'd be bouncing around through all the aisles like, I want to come to this young woman right here, and oh, what beautiful energy around you. And they want to tell you, you know, and give you this message. Sometimes Hank would start with a spirit message only to dive in to that soulfulness and say the message that you really needed to hear. You have to honor that energy. You have to go into that trance. You have to go into that place where you lose track of time. You know, and they'd stand up at the platform there behind the altar and say, okay, Hank, one more. And he'd be, one more message, Hank. We got to move along. Okay. Well, I have to go to this fellow back here. And he would even come to me. I feel like the first Sunday I went, he came to me and brought through my grandmother, which, hello, that's like huge for me. Talk about an emotional punch to hear somebody come up and then he looks at you and his face changes and his eyes go inward. He's looking at you, but he's looking through you, and he leans over on the pew and he's pointing at me and he's like, there's a grandmother with you. oh, she's so wonderful. She's with you all the time, and she just wants to tell you, smile. Sometimes it's okay to feel sad, but she likes it when you smile. Let's see that smile." And I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome, So watching Hank perform was incredible, and the other mediums were good too. I'm not denying it. Like, they had a range of styles, There was one guy there who would give messages. They were always in metaphor, It's like you don't know if it's legit or not. You don't know where's that validating name, where's that validating detail. He would come to me and be like, they're showing me you like on a lake, like a big pond, and you're going to catch a fish. It's going to be a big fish. And then he'd go to the next person and you're like, maybe it's about that novel I'm writing. Like I'm all alone on the lake and I'm going to catch a big fish. Like I'm going to get a good book deal maybe. So there's a range of different mediums and not everybody had the same attunement. So there's different styles.
One time I had a lady I found online in the beginning of the internet days, and she was an angel card reader, and she would read angels and send you a tape. And she gave me some good pointers that helped point me in the right direction, but she stopped reading, because it was too hard for her, like she felt too much.
He's more into the dark stuff. He said there was like a young teenage girl with me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know nobody like that. Well, she's standing right behind you. He didn't say anything that was right.
So it was like an older lady that did it. She read tarot cards with a regular playing card deck. She read for me and it was great and a lot of things came through, but it wasn't like you. You seemed to bring everyone through you. You actually epitomized the person, in my opinion. Like you changed all out when you like just took my dad. That's exactly, my dad just took you over. And that's how we felt.
The first time didn't really work out that great, so it was rescheduled, and even that one didn't work out great with like the mix of people or what have you.
And something, I don't know if somebody was off in the group because it was the same exact group, but it wasn't working, so you refunded us.
The first time we ever came to see you, I brought my mother, which she wanted to but didn't, but did. So she came along. She was like a beacon for you. You came right over. My father had passed away in 2003. I guess he just saw her through you and you just came full barrel right over to her. Yeah, before he passed of cancer, but before that he had broken his leg, his femur, and it wasn't repaired because he was so far gone with cancer. So when you started coming towards us, you were like limping, and then you stopped limping and then looked and then corrected your stance and then went, wow, I can dance again. And my mom just looked at me and I looked at her and even your voice changed. And then you looked at her and said, wow, I love you. And she just lost it. I lost it. And it was amazing.
At one point, Hank actually left the church. He had moved out to Vegas. He liked the flowers over at the Bellagio Gardens and all this, and he just loved that. So he retired out there, So it's also around that time that the pastor at the time had come up to me, and, I'd been doing readings. I had been going to these spiritual groups, these meditation circles, and she's like, I think you're ready to do messages. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. So she watched me do a little mini reading on the side room at the church for her, and she's like, okay, this is good. So she went over the legal things, like you can't talk medical advice, you can't talk financial advice, we could get sued, we're a charter, we could lose our charter. So there's rules to doing messages from the platform. But I got up, I always had to take my shoes and socks off, so here I am barefoot, in this church with this congregation. And there's some people that go back to the beginnings of that particular branch, that particular church, from when they first started out in someone's home in Camden, New Jersey, doing meditations and doing mediumship circles. Well, they eventually, got a benefactor to purchase this church. And some of those old heads were still around, man. And it was very like Methodist, and it was very like say the Our Father and pray to Jesus and then bring mediumship. Well, there was other people coming that were more new agey. There was hippies. There's Jana Banana trying to do a conga line around the church to bring up the energy, you know? There was a guy, Larry, who used to come up to the front of the thing and try to bring the energy, you know, boost the energy. And one time Larry, you know, he dressed in a cow costume and he walked around. You got to pick the paper with the animal on it, and you have to get up and enact this animal, and we all have to guess, you know? And there's some people that rolled their eyes like, what is this guy doing? We're not a zoo. And he's like, nope, it's time for the zoo, everybody, because he was just trying to bring joy and fun and raise the vibration, you know? So somebody would, oh, they're like an elephant, ah, ha, 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 ha. Well, you know, it got a little too like hokey, I think. So the board had to meet, and it was like they set new rules, you know? It was like at one point they were telling me that I couldn't wear jeans and be a medium anymore at the platform, that I had to have a dress code. I'm like, okay, this, like, come on, man. And the thing is, you know, after the service, you'd go down to the church basement where they had, like, you know, coffee and cakes, and sometimes they'd have, like, spaghetti luncheon and stuff. They would have little functions down there sometimes. And I always loved going down to the church basement after the service, because it was like, through talking to people, you found out about other meditation circles. People would share books or CDs, and it was just a cool kind of learning environment, you know. The pastor at the time actually ran a meditation circle, but it was always full, you know. She only had a certain amount of room, and if it was like 12 people, we can't fit anymore without, you know, it clogging up the work, so we got to keep it at that. So it's around this time that I started trying to do my own meditation circles, right? At this point, I'm like 5, 6, 7 years into this. You know, I've gone to a lot of different groups, a lot of living rooms, a lot of classes. I've tried a lot of things, and I'm absorbing it. You know, I'm a sponge. I would kind of absorb Robert's hypnotherapy thing from the regression and lead people in past life regression. I would do Jan and Ken's thing with the, you're going to get a message from someone in spirit. And, you know, at one point, I was actually doing like a weekly meditation circle for a while. Like, we were doing it regularly. It was almost like I was starting to step into the teacher role instead of the student, you know? It was like, when I lead the meditation, it's like I'm opening up to that channel too. It's not just sitting here and saying the words to get you to relax. I'm actually grooving with the vibe in the room, so I can feel when someone in the circle, maybe they're not feeling relaxed yet, so I'll take an extra minute on the legs relaxing, feel the relaxation energy moving into your hips, and I actually will kind of adjust my narrative to the energy of the room, and I enjoyed that, you know?
So one of the girls in the original group dropped out, and I was at work, and she called me and she said, would you like to come? I know it's really last minute. It's like, wow, like I've never done anything like this. So I was like, you know what? Fate happens. I'm going to go for this. Called my grandmom. I was like, I'm really nervous. What should I do? And she said, just ground yourself, you know, stick your bare feet in the dirt and, you know, just be honest and open and see what happens. You actually had come over and you said that it was a very busy room. There was a lot of energy. And you asked if we could please privately move into another location. So we went into a bedroom and we kind of sat around you. I think there was about 7 of us, and you started meditating. And as you did, I just knew that you were going to talk about me first. And you had no way of knowing this. Like I said, I was the last girl there. You didn't even have the chance to Google me or know who I was. The way that you spoke to me was in more of like a feminine kind of undertone, and the way that you presented it to me, it was just a little bit more palatable. It was, I know that this is hard for you, but you're depriving yourself. You're depriving yourself. And I knew the way that you said it, it was just warm. It was with love. It came from a place of understanding. I knew that in a way, like I had done some weird things and I didn't know why I did them, or you know, was this something that was learned behavior because I had grown up in different kind of situations, I think, than most people might have. It was something that was hurting me all the time. It was the way that I was living my life. I was not being true to myself. I was depriving myself. I had put all these restrictions on my diet. I wasn't being healthy, and I was working out into like an oblivion. I tried to listen, but you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you you really gave me my first real experience. You said that my guides were saying to you, don't tell her too much. She's going to change her mind. You know, she's on this brink of, I guess, healing. We started it relatively early, I think like maybe 6 o'clock or something, and you didn't leave until almost 10:30, 11 at night. Oh yeah, and you gave us all like spot on, all of us, every single one of us. It was very, very true.
Now, I had been doing readings at the church like every Sunday for a few months now, like busting off my shoes, walking up barefoot to the altar and like delivering messages. I feel like I was modeling it off of Hank. Like they let Hank run and get into a trance. So that's how I was going to do it. I was going to run and get into a trance because I really enjoyed his style. So I kind of styled mine off of that. It's not just like clairvoyance where you're getting an image and you're unpacking it. I thought mediumship was like channeling. I thought it was all energy and you could empathize with the person you're reading for. You could tell that the message either wasn't for them or was for them based on their vibe, their energy. You could feel it. But some other mediums who have abilities are not plugged into the sitter in that way. They have to go into a place in their head where they just connect differently. They say what they're getting, and you get what you get, and that's the way it works. They can't get held up on whether or not you're accepting the message, and I didn't know that at the time. I'm looking at it like, I need help, I'm struggling, I'm reaching out to other mediums, like, why does it work for me this way, and why does alcohol affect me, and why does this, that, and the other, and they're like, you shouldn't be using your personal energy. I read for, 10 people a sitting, half an hour at a time. That's my reading day. And I'm like, oh my God, I could never do that. Like, it would destroy me. And they're like, well, it shouldn't destroy you. You need Reiki attunement. You need grounding, and I did that stuff. I did the Reiki. I did the grounding. I did it their way. I did the clairvoyant classes. I did the psychometry classes. I did all the different classes. And what I found is mixed results,
And you had a really hard time reading us, in fact. So you're like, I don't know what's going on. I can't read you. Maybe it's the house. So we switched houses, and it wasn't the house. So you came to Ocean City. Let me think. Then you went to my brother's house in Beasley's Point, I think. And then you couldn't read us there. And then we decided, all right, let's cut our group down because somebody must be, not being able to be read. So we're like, let's go to my sister's in Haddonfield. So you had to come up to Haddonfield. There were 3 of us. So my sister and me and then our friend. And you said, listen, let's divide you up. So you said, I'll take your friend first. And we were in my sister's basement and my sister and I came upstairs and you were with my friend and you were trying to read her and you said, I can't do this. I can't do this. You were really frustrated. What is going on? And you said, the spirits, they're blocking. They don't want me to read you guys. And you said, I have to leave. And she came upstairs and she's like, he's leaving. And we're like, what? Why? Gosh, what happened? And you came upstairs and you were like, you were good. You like relaxed and it was good that we just talked normally. Like you seemed to be like, I don't know what's up, but sorry, So then he's like, you guys need to give this time. Maybe it's just like, give it a year, give it 2 years and let's see how it goes. And we're like, okay, that sounds good. I don't know when a couple months before when you had to leave. And then she found out in like June of that year and she died by August. It was a very quick cancer. Nobody knew. I mean, she didn't know she was sick. It was terrible. So then when she was sick, she said to me, do you think that's why Scott couldn't read me? And I said, I don't know, Chrissy. I thought the same thing. And then my brother and my friend who was being read with us at the funeral said, now we know why he couldn't read us.
My favorite ever was when you told my friend Lily that she's going to have babies. I was thinking in my head, that's definitely going to happen because we would think the opposite. And that's when Scott's always right. And she was just like, I feel like it changed her. Like it made her more excited about the thought of it, like that it could happen. Before she would be like, it wasn't even fun to have like to look at her because she'd be like mad and grumpy about it, like not happening. Now she's like actually speaking about it and it's like, holy shit, like what? And I swear it happened ever since that reading.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this one up. Looking back, man, that covered a large stretch of years. And I stay in touch with a lot of people from that time. Look, you are all very important to me. If I skipped over, our friendship or that one really crazy story that blew your mind that time, we ran out of time here, So my apologies. So thank you again for listening. I love the feedback on this. Anybody that wants to reach out, I just don't have time to reply to everybody, but I really enjoy the feedback. Your feedback has been wonderful. So thank you again for listening. More episodes are on rippleroadpod.com, streaming on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts. I don't even know where it's streaming. It's everywhere. And check out the bonus content. On each episode, I put a little bonus content up. Check that out at rippleroadpod.com. And also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Scott Edward Henry. That's Scott with 1 T. Am I going to say it every time? I don't know. You should know by now, Scott with 1 T. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll talk to you next week. Be cool, people.